today's society, we start to see some of the signs about the Day of Judgment, which the Prophet spoke about. For example, the Prophet was asked about the Day of Judgment, when is it going to be? And he said about the barefooted Arabs, the Bedouins, these people who were, dealing with camels and sheep and these things, that they will compete with each other to build tall buildings. Now today in the Middle East, because of the boom in oil, these people who thought for thousands of years, they were just dealing with camels and herd and sheep, they are now building these tall, extravagant buildings.
This claim about the Arab Bedouins building tall buildings is repeated often, and it is a very poor argument for a supposedly accurate prediction. Currently, the Burj Khalifa in the UAE is the tallest building since 2009, but before that it was Taipei 101 in Taiwan. Was the prediction therefore wrong before 2009? What if a non-Arab country then builds a taller building? Would you say that the prediction is wrong now? Do you think Arabs could have worked towards this goal given that they know this prediction? This is the same as the waiter in a restaurant bringing out the exact food that I ordered. Is that a prediction?
In Islam, we believe that science is a beautiful thing. You look out at nature, you apply your reason. So we don't have a problem with science, we embrace science. But as Muslims, we believe in miracles. So for example, God created the world. He created the system of the seasons. He created reproduction. However, apart from them, what we call natural world, we also believe miracles are possible. It's possible for God to right now create a child ex nihilo without mother and father. Why? Because God has created the system of reproduction, but you can also create it without. It's not logically incoherent. So we believe in miracles, which are exceptions, but we believe in generally science.
If you embrace science, then you have to accept and question yourself when science contradicts your beliefs. If you're going to value your beliefs over science, then that is not embracing science.
I believe God has created us to have a rational mind. And that rational mind is trustworthy, not because it evolved due to natural selection, but because God has actually endowed us with that.
You can believe whatever you want, but if you can't rationally justify it, why should anybody care?
Now, because of that paradigm, the paradigm that I begin off with, I don't need to justify my rationality. But an atheistic perspective, the reason why they need to justify it is because, for example...
Before we move on to his example, what he's basically saying is he doesn't need to justify his position to anyone because it makes sense to him what he believes, but other people need to rationally justify their claims. This is double standards, delusion and stupidity on a colossal scale.
For example, if there's a person who stares at a cave and he sees 3 lions walking in, 2 lions walk out, and he can't do mathematics. He walks in there assuming there's no lion, he's going to get eaten, right? So therefore natural selection would have developed these rational faculties. However, when it comes to us sitting around, having coffee, discussing quantum mechanics, that doesn't explain by natural selection.
It is explained by natural selection once you understand how an evolved brain with a higher intellect has a higher chance of survival and is thus selected for.
I believe that's explained by theism. Natural selection can only explain our fitness enhancing behavior. It does not explain why we look out to the cosmos.
If you understand that a quest to understand the environment better, like looking out to the cosmos, is an example of fitness enhancing behavior as it improves our survivability, then it will make sense to you.
It doesn't explain our yearning for moral achievements. All of these facets cannot be explained by natural selection because they don't have fitness enhancing benefits.
A higher morality does have fitness enhancing benefits, as cooperation increases the chances of survival.
Like you mentioned, if you're staring at a flower for a long period of time, you get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. That's not evolutionary very wise.
And that's why natural selection will select against any animal that loses awareness of its surroundings.
However, evolutionary theorists can explain beauty from the respect of reproduction. So you find someone beautiful and you reproduce and you can have fitness enhancing behavior that way. However, when it comes to many of our moral judgments, many of the values that we actually hold, this cannot be explained by evolutionary theorists.
It can once you understand that we have evolved morality where cooperation helps overall survivability. This is something he never understands.
Evolution cannot explain design. By evolution, I mean Darwinian evolution, natural selection alone.
Evolution by natural selection acting on random mutations can explain the appearance of design. There is no pre-planning. Anybody postulating a pre-planned design will need to demonstrate evidence that this was the case and that there was a designer.
We can have an idea that God used evolution or the processes of evolution in certain contexts.
You can believe whatever you want, but if you can't provide any evidence for it, nobody will take you seriously.
There are some exceptions though. I believe human beings are miraculous creation. Like, I'll give you an example. How is a normal child born? I'm not going to get into the birds and the bees and that, but we at the same time, we believe in the virgin birth for Jesus, we as Muslims. But at the same time, we believe that children are born from a man and a woman together. We believe that the first man, what we say Adam, this man was a miraculous creation. There may have been hominids and other types of species before that.
Why have all of this, evidence of gradual change, and then say suddenly there was some divine intervention, an entirely new species came along?
So Darwin's general idea of gradualism, even if I wasn't Muslim, from a purely evidence point of view, gradualism is false in the fossil record. We have massive changes, like the Cambrian explosion. We have massive changes. In chapter 6 of Darwin's book, In the Origin of Species, he talks about gradualism being a problem due to the Cambrian explosion.
This was not the answer to his question. There is gradualism, but there are also other types of evolutionary change, such as punctuated equilibrium. Rapid changes like the Cambrian explosion can be explained by changes in the environment causing rapid speciation.
So look, we believe God created the world. Some species could have evolved, but when it comes to human beings, we believe it is a miraculous creation. There was a case where a woman was raped on a motorway, and there was a few people involved in her rape. Now, from a utilitarian point of view, if you look at that thing, you have people maximizing their pleasure and one person who's going through pain. So if we look at maximization of pleasure and minimizing of pain, then from that perspective, that would be the morally right thing to do.
He doesn't understand utilitarianism here. This is a family of ethical theories that prescribe actions that maximize happiness and well-being for all affected individuals. In this example, he thinks the actions would be supported under utilitarianism. However, he ignores that maximizing well-being looks at the wider consequences of actions, so the woman being raped would not be the only person whose well-being would be affected. If these scenarios were allowed to happen, then the woman's loved ones would seek revenge. Women would then go out armed, and the consequences for allowing this type of behavior would be much worse than banning it.
So this utilitarian way of looking at things, one, it doesn't give you an objective standard.
It does give you an objective standard if you value well-being. Your supposed theistic alternative isn't any more objective either.
Two, it gives you absurd results.
You're saying it gives absurd results because you don't understand ethics.
And three, there's no way of adjudicating between two different scenarios with different moral variables.
Once you agree on the standard being measured, such as well-being, then you can derive objective values for different scenarios. Utilitarianism is not perfect, but it is better than any alternative in terms of maximizing well-being.
So your view starts with the idea that the universe is an intelligent, conscious place. Eternal. So what makes you think that the universe is intelligence and has will, I'm guessing? Why wouldn't you just go one level higher and say God is the creator of the universe?
I could say the other way around. Why make up a God when you've got this universe that does that?
Because when you have something which is intricately designed, like the universe.
How do you know that the universe is designed? You need to demonstrate that there is a designer.
And you have this order and organization and complexity. Then to attribute that to the entity itself wouldn't make any sense. You'd have to attribute it to the one who put it in place.
Again, that's another unsubstantiated assertion you've thrown in. Can you demonstrate that it was put in place by an outside entity?
You yourself, you exist right now, but for you to come into existence, there was a myriad of actual conditions, the conditions of existence for you to come into existence. So there was external input. So why wouldn't you apply that to the system itself if it applies on the micro level?
That's a very poor analogy, as an individual person who relies on the outside environment to survive cannot be compared to the cosmos, where it hasn't been demonstrated that it needed something outside of it to survive. This clip is just special pleading, watchmaker analogy, and an argument from ignorance.
Orphan genes are particular types of genes which we have in organisms, right? Now, you have an orphan gene in a human being and you have orphan genes in great apes. And if you were to do a comparison between the orphan genes, you'd actually come up with 0% homology.
Actually, that's wrong. This paper, which I will link in the description, shows that there are orphan genes that are human-specific, some that are chimpanzee-specific, and some that occur throughout the hominoid species.
But if you were to look at the proteins, you'd come up with 20%. And if you were to look at, say, certain molecules and ignore the rest and say that, okay, do you know what we're going to do is we're going to look at what's similar and we're going to ignore what's different, then you can come up with 99%. But it's very subjective because you're picking and choosing, and according to that, you can come up with whatever percentage.
This is a rather garbled, ill-informed statement. There are different measures of comparing genomes, but when applied consistently between species, they always show chimpanzees and bonobos as the closest living species to humans, with the most commonly used methods showing between 96 to 99% similarity. I have addressed this in other videos, but for a fully professional analysis, please watch this video by Erica from the Gutsick Gibbon channel. I will link it in the description.